Welcome to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. Join Reiki Master and Quantum Healing expert Wes Coons as he guides listeners through the depths of self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment to uncover the version of you we haven't met yet. Hello and welcome back to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad, where we are getting ready to embark on Season 2, Episode 2, Double Deuce.
Double Deuce.
Double Deuce.
Hey, Season 2 is really turning out to be great. We got tons of new listeners. We just recorded Margaret. She's going to be on the show later. And by the way, if you want to do an Egypt trip, and go to Egypt with one of the most gifted healers you're ever going to meet. I believe that's happening in October. I don't have the dates, but you reach out to us and we'll connect you with Margaret, and it will be fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing. I was hanging on every word, so you guys are really going to enjoy that episode.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we've got so much to cover. You know, we were discussing earlier, I was like, what do we do first? And the first thing we're going to do is thank our listeners. Man, we're growing like crazy and we've got the best listeners ever. So thank you so much. You know, we try to do that every episode, and I don't know if we get it every time, but we just appreciate you. We hope that you're learning something from the show. I hope that you can resonate with something you can implement into your life, because that's what we're here to do, is help you change the way you think so you become the person that you're supposed to be. So what are we doing today?
I believe you mentioned something about a vision quest, Wes.
Yes, a vision quest. You know, I had to ask Lakota, you know, I know I did it and I went up there to do it, but I'm like, you know, what exactly did we do? So she texted me so I can read it to you. She said, your vision quest is a ceremony to reconnect you to your life's vision, your obligations that you've made upon entry into this world, and how to be of service to yourself and of mankind. I'm like, you know, I like that. I could not have worded it this well. And she said it's a personal time to visit God. So what's the name of that show on TV? It's not Yukon. What is that called? I know everybody's like, oh, I know what it is. Or the people are living on the horse ranch or whatever. Yellowstone. That's it.
Wow, you didn't even give me much time to answer that. Thanks.
Well, because you watched like one episode, you wouldn't know. So if you've watched Yellowstone, when they take the guy all the way out and he's sitting under a tree and they were prayer ties that were wrapped around him. It was a string with all these little colorful cloth things. That was a vision quest. And if you watch the show, you know, he's out there, he's fasting. He doesn't have really anything to keep him warm. And then these visions come in and show him things. That's what I went to the mountain to do. So to do a vision quest, you have to have somebody be there with you. So Ty, of course, went. Ty's always a trooper. We go there, and one of the things that happened, I guess we got there, I don't know, maybe about 3:30, and 3:30, 4 o'clock. So we didn't have much time before it was getting dark. And so Lakota made me leave made me leave my firearm back in the truck. She's like, you can't take a weapon up there. I'm like, what the fuck? I said, you know, we're in the middle of the woods, up on top of a mountain, and you know, there's wild bear there's all kinds of stuff. So I did what I was told. She said, you're going to be divinely protected. I'm like, okay, you know, let's fucking hold your hat on that one, man. You know how protected I've been so far. So she said, I'm like, well, what do I bring? She's like, oh my gosh. And you bring a tarp. I'm like, okay. And she said, you know, bring things to make prayer ties. So if you don't know what a prayer tie is, that is probably a 1.5 to 2 inch square piece of cloth. You'll have some tobacco and you'll have string. And what you do is you put some tobacco into the cloth, fold it up, and tie it on the string. So in the Native American culture, tobacco is important, it's valuable, it's sacred. So as you do that, you take a moment to spend time with yourself and put your prayers into that tie, whatever your prayer is. You know, our words are powerful. Our prayers are powerful. And I got to experience how powerful that is this weekend. So I had my prayer tie stuff and, you know, I had a little book bag. Well, I didn't tell her I brought one of those tents that you hang from tree to tree, right? So we go up there and we're climbing up the side of this mountain. And it's like the side of the mountain where you're grabbing trees to pull yourself up. So Lakota's going up the mountain like there's nothing, not making a noise. Ty's a city boy. He's falling all over the place, making more fucking noise than you know what to do with yourself. And I'm probably not that far off as bad. And we get up the side of this mountain. She says, now, when you get up here, don't go that way very far because you're going to fall off a cliff. I'm like,
oh, so nothing to worry about.
Yeah. So you don't go far if you have to potty in the middle of the night, right? So we're going, and we get almost up to the top where it's flat. And there's this big rotten tree stump there. And she says, oh my goodness, this is the spot. I was like, oh, this is the spot right here? She said, yeah. I said, you know, if we go like 10 more feet, it's flat. She said, yeah, but this is a spot. I'm like, and 10 more feet, it's flat. She said, no, this is the spot. This is where you're going to be for 3 days. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? We're going to be sitting on the side of a mountain and 10 more feet, it's flat. But I'm like, okay, no problem. We will do what you tell me to do. And so you should have, you're supposed to have a sacred fire, right, Andrea? So my sacred fire was one of those freaking 7-day fucking candles.
What?
Yeah. So you're in the middle of the woods and you got a fucking 7-day candle. So I brought 3. And so, you know, you're in the middle. She's like, well, there's a no burn zone going right now. You can't have, there's no fire zone. I'm like, great. We're in this sacred thing and I'm going to be holding a match for 3 fucking days. So I'm like, all right, no problem. And so we're sitting there and I don't understand what she does. You know, we recognize the 4 directions. She sang some songs. Some of the songs I recognize, you kind of sing along with a little bit. And she said, now when you're here and the sacred circle is created, you do not leave the sacred circle. I'm like, okay. So if anybody knows me, you're like, that motherfucker, he's going to be pressing the button. So I'm like, so what happens if you leave the sacred circle? She's like, it will be bad. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to press that button. She goes, even if you see a naked woman, don't leave the sacred circle. I'm like, you know how often you see a naked woman in the middle of the wilderness. I'm like, that there is a trap no matter how you cut it. I said, okay, I won't leave. And the whole thing is you're supposed to stay awake, you know, as best you can the entire time. You know, it's fasting or semi-fasting. And so it was getting dark quick. So she did her prayers and we lit the candles. So I had my 3 little candles out and I didn't have time to do the prayer ties. I mean, the prayer ties take hours to do, right? You know, I think I had to do 450 of them. And the circle that I was in was probably 10 by 14, something like that. So, you know, the prayer ties are going to go around the exterior of that circle. And I remember thinking when I was planning to go to the mountain, you know, one of the things that happens is when you accept to be in a ceremony, you're already in ceremony at that moment. So I was in ceremony for a couple months, and if you're in a ceremony, things happen and things shift and stuff starts clearing the way. So it can be a lot sometimes. And I remember being worried that, what if I don't see anything cool? What if I don't get this message? Because you're supposed to be there to get a message, all right? You're supposed to be there and, God steps in or whatever that looks like and says, there's a little fucking burning bush or something. Wes, this is your mission or whatever. I'm like, all right. And, whenever I do those things, that self-doubt, whether, is it going to happen for me? And the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, I see stuff all the time. I mean, fuck, I see dead people all the time. So, when I thought about that, I was like, all right, no worries. I've seen other things on the mountain. And so I kind of let that anxiety go to the wayside. And it was, I don't know, it was maybe 6 o'clock or something. It was getting dark and they had to leave. And she had 2 or 3 dogs. She had Ty. And within like 20 seconds, you couldn't see them. You couldn't hear them. I don't know where they went. It was crazy because you should have been able to see them for a while and they were gone. They were gone. And it was eerie, right? You couldn't hear anything. I mean, you just couldn't hear anything. It was just me. And there was this bird that made a nest in the stump I was sitting next to. Me and that friggin' bird became friends after 3 days, I tell you that. So, I'm sitting there and I'm setting up my stuff. I wasn't going to sit on a fucking tarp for 3 days, I can tell you that. I'm pulling all this shit out of my bag. And
Air mattress.
Yeah, just about. So I'm like hooking this thing up to the trees. I got all the straps going. And there's this one Indian dude that I've seen there on the mountain many times, but he showed up. He was like about, 100 feet from me. And this time, he wasn't translucent. You can see it looked like a regular person standing there. I mean, you can see every detail. And he didn't look happy. His hair was braided back. He had a feather that was down. And he had those leather pants. There's almost like chaps or whatever. And they got the decorations on the side. And no shirt. And he's just sitting there staring at me. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? I said, I'm Wes. What's up? And he's just fucking looking at me like I'm going to cut your head off or something. It was a little intimidating. And I sat there and I'm like, well, would you like to come over and we talk? Do you got a message for me? You got any food? And so he just sat there and I'm like, finally, I'm like, bro, I got shit to do. So if you want to fucking hang out, hang out. If not, I don't know. So I'm doing my stuff, and literally like 40 minutes later, he finally disappeared. It was bizarre. He was there a long time. And so, I had my little tent that hangs off the ground there, and I happen to have a little chair that I pulled out of the bag too. And, I felt like 2 days went by, and it was an hour and 10 minutes. I'm like, man, this is going to be a long 3 days. So it gets dark. And as it's getting dark behind me, where, that 10 feet that goes up, there's that plateau. So you think about, I'm setting on a ridge, almost at the top. It's pretty steep on all sides. And that flat plateau goes back about 150 feet. Then it's just thick forest. I don't know what was behind that. And there was nothing there when it was bright. But when it started to get dark, there was a cave entrance there. And I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm rubbing my eyes and I'm looking. And I'm like, is that a cave? I'm like, what the fuck is happening, right? And all of a sudden, Andrew, you know how in Predator, when the, like the alien thing wants to go invisible, but you can still kind of see it moving? You can see through it?
Yeah.
no exaggeration. Those people, you could tell they were people, were coming out of the cavern or the cave that looked like that. And they're like high stepping it down the mountain. I'm talking like 16, 18, 20 of them, one at a time. Like they're going somewhere. And you remember old, what's that show, Moving Up on the East Side? What's that guy's name?
Oh, the Jeffersons, George Jefferson.
You know how Jefferson walked with his backpack and he's throwing his arms back and forth, he's hauling ass? Half of them walk like that. I'm like, get it, George Jefferson. But they were going somewhere, and then all of a sudden there's this thing that was standing there, and it was big. I mean, no neck. It's like its shoulders were crumped up to its ears, sitting there staring at me. I'm like, oh man. I mean, I was a little intimidated because whatever it was big. It was translucent a little bit, but you could just tell it was fucking pissed. And it's staring at me and staring at me. And I'm like, I'm not leaving the sacred circle. And I had to pee so bad. I was scared to go out the circle.
Where did you pee?
I peed over the line.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I ain't leaving the circle. But there was no prayer ties that, signified the edge of the circle, right? So I had my 3 little candles lit, and I mean, it's pitch black. And all of a sudden, something's getting killed. I don't know if it was a baby deer or whatever it was, but whatever was killing it was taking its time. It was horrible. It was brutal. This thing screaming at the top of his lungs, and it lasted for hours. And I'm like, man, are you fucking kidding me? And I mean, I remember at one point I just screamed. I'm like, would you just fucking kill it? And it was just blood curdling to hear. And so all of a sudden, there's these fireflies, the little light up fireflies. And I'm looking at them, and if you got fireflies, they're just in different places and stuff like that. And the fireflies were, they kind of like bunched up with each other, and all of a sudden they're coming towards all 3 candles. There's like 3 big piles of them, and they're like throwing themselves in front of each other. It's really bizarre. And then they start attacking the candles, trying to put the lights out. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I am not going to be out here in the dark. So I'm like shooing these things away. The candles are being knocked over all freaking night long. There's no reason why they're knocked over. They're just knocked over. It wasn't breezy. And I don't know. It's probably like 9 or 9:30. So, I'm thinking, okay. She said, don't leave the circle. Got that. Stay up as long as you can. Okay. And some things are going to come to you and give you messages. She said, the bear, Andrea, is going to come give you a message. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. A bear or a bear? She's like, a bear. I said, well, is that bear a real bear, or is that bear like a spiritual bear? She said, it's a real bear. I said, so a bear that you can fucking touch, that can eat me, or one that you can see but can't touch and eat me? She's like, it won't eat you. I'm like, well, which is it? She's like, it's a real bear. I was like, but real bear in spiritual world? We're having this argument.
These are important clarifications throughout your life. I find that, I'm like, you saw someone, was it a real person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's dead. So you've got to clarify stuff with Lakota. Just saying, because I wanted to know. And she said, Wes, a living bear is going to come to you while you're up there, and don't leave the circle. I'm like, all right. So I'm sitting there thinking about all the rules, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to bed, and if you fuckers need to wake me up for me to get a message, set the alarm or something. So I crawl my thing, I go to sleep. And it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up, and it was like the entire forest stopped. There wasn't a sound anywhere. The candles were still burning, but you couldn't see but maybe 2 feet with the candles. But something was there. And I remember getting out of my little tent thing and, kind of sitting in my chair, and I'm looking around, and, I had experienced the dragons before on the mountain, and I could feel the energy of the dragon. Like if something that is 40 foot tall is flying above you, you're going to feel that, you're going to feel that energy. And this thing was flying down right above my head. And I thought it was interesting because nothing was making noise when this was going on. No crickets, no bugs, no nothing. And I'm like, all right, there's that. And Andrea, I think maybe 45 minutes goes by, and I must have dozed off. And when I woke up, there's these big ass green eyes looking at me. And I'm like, I was like, that can't be eyeballs. So I'm like turning the flashlight on because I had a flashlight. There's nothing there. I turn it off, you see them. Turn it on, there's nothing there. So I'm looking, I'm like, that has got to be 2 branches from the tree that's reflecting off of the candles. So I'm trying to justify this, and they're shaped like big eyeballs, they're shaped like dragon eyeballs. And she had said, if the dragon comes to you, you get 1 question. Just 1. So I'm like, okay. I'm sitting here in my mind. I'm like, I'm going to come up. I'm going to come up with the coolest question there is. And I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about it. And I'm like waiting for the dragon to come. And, I'm trying to come up with something that, like Bruce Lee's going to ask some fucking cool question or something, right? And right when I said it, all I said is, what's my purpose here? I'm like, oh, I shot my fucking chance. And he says, you're here to be a great healer. I'm like, all right, this is a little uneventful. I'm just saying, I'm expecting to have earth-shattering shit. And that's what he said. And then, so think about being in a room with somebody and they're just staring at you.
Much like this.
Yeah, like you're staring at a hole in my head right now. So I'm sitting there. So he answered the question. I'm thinking about it. I was like, okay, that gives me some clarification. I was already doing that work, and, it was cool to get that message. And I don't know, I kind of thought it would be like this, the burning bush, Wes, your life mission is to whatever. And it was just crystal clear. Your mission, your purpose here is to be a great healer. So, after about 10 minutes, he's still staring at me. I'm like, so what do you like to eat? And he goes, you only get 1 question. I'm like, well, where do you live? That's a question. I'm like, all right. I said, so are you going to sit here and stare at me all night? You get 1 question. I said, so what you're saying is you're just going to fucking sit there and stare at me all night. And he didn't say anything after that. He's like, this motherfucker. So I'm like, all right. So there was part of it. So she had said the dragon's going to come. You may be visited by some ancestors. That happened like in the first 2 minutes. The bear hasn't shown up yet. And at the end of the day, there's a message that's supposed to come to me. There's a message that comes from a vision quest. And, if you watch the TV show, the guy had seen his future, right? And he didn't tell anybody. And I don't remember what happened, but he's seen his future. So after a little bit, I go lay back down. And, next thing I know, it's morning. And I hear Ty coming with the dogs and Lakota. And, I get up. Andrea, she sees all the stuff I brought. I don't know what she said in her language, but I don't think it was good. She's like, little brother, how did I know? I'm like, girl, I'm a retired Marine. I did my time in the field. I'm going to be fucking comfortable, all right? So the trick was not to ask permission, but ask for forgiveness later. And so they came up and she brought me a hard-boiled egg and a handful of nuts and some water. And we sat and talked for a little while. And she gave me a message. She gave me a teaching. And I don't remember exactly what it was. And she said, basically, be still. And the answer that you're seeking will reveal itself. And, I don't think I knew even what question I was asking. I didn't know what answer I was looking for. And, I'm like, I hope I'm doing it right. That self-doubt is there. This was years ago, so I'm way more healed today than I was. And, that victim energy of, oh, it's going to work for everybody but me, and I'm not going to get a message, and why would I get a message, and who fucking cares about me, and all, those things go through your mind at some point. And so she said, Ty, you're going to stay here, and he's my support person. And we talked. Ty and I always have these really deep conversations, and he talks about God, and we talk about what we're doing, and he's telling me about all the great food that he's eating down there on the mountain. He's like, man, I'm so full from the fried chicken last night. He knows I love fried chicken. And, I could just sit and talk to him all day long. So he was there a couple hours. He's like, all right, I'm going down. He says, I'm getting hungry for lunch. I'm like, whatever, motherfucker. So
you had your handful of nuts.
I had my handful of nuts and a hard-boiled egg. And so he, he stomps down the mountain, and I'm sitting there, and Andrea, like 4 or 5 hours go by. I'm like, man, I've been here, and I'm seeing, I'm digging deep. And finally, I had a little notebook so I can journal. I don't like to journal, but I got the notebook out. And I happened to look at my watch, and 42 minutes went by. I'm like, I swear to God, it was 5 hours. I'm like, fuck, we're going to be here a long ass time. So I started doing my prayer ties. And so there's 4 sticks around the circles. Each one represents a different direction, east, south, west, and north. And so I'm making these prayer ties. It is probably getting close to dinner time. So I'm basically done at this point. I start in the east, and I tie the string, and I go all the way around. And the most extraordinary thing happened when I connected the strings together, Andrea. We're sitting there, and I really wasn't feeling much there, no wild sensations or energy. But the second I touched those strings together, it was almost like grabbing a electric fence. It shocked me that hard. And there's this energy field that was created from the prayer ties. And when the circle was complete, it like turned it on. And it was unexpected. It was beautiful. It was extraordinary. It was bizarre. And so I remember I just kind of sat back, and as one more of those aha, what in the world is going on moments. How can this be true? How can me putting prayers in a little piece of cloth and tobacco do anything? And it did everything. So all day long, the candles were getting knocked over. They were getting blown out. But I noticed after about an hour, the candles weren't messed with anymore. So I moved the candles within an inch of the line. And I had actually pulled them really close to me because they kept getting knocked over. But with the circle in place, I put it to the edge. And not one time the rest of the ceremony, not one time did it get knocked over. Not one time did the fireflies come in. Not one time did it get blown out. You know, those candles are hard to blow out because they're down that little tube, right? So, you know, I'm thinking about this divine protection from the prayers that I put in these 450 prayer ties. And I'm like, how powerful is that? How, you know, it's teaching me how powerful our word is. How powerful when we say something, we think something that brings it in an instant. How we can manifest the things that we want to manifest. How we can become the person that you're supposed to be. How you can become the beacon of light that you're supposed to be. People ask me all the time, why am I here? You're here to be a fucking beacon of light. That's why you're here. You're here to heal generational curses and create generational blessings. That's why we're here. We're here to look at life differently, like how life happens for me and not to me, and how I cannot be a victim even in the most difficult of circumstances, because there's a lesson to be learned there. And if you learn the lessons and look for the lessons and look for the beauty and the pain, it changes things. It takes you from being weak and from being broken and from being thrown away and from feeling fucking lost and wanting to fucking end your fucking miserable existence. And it takes those things away because you think differently. Because you step into your power. Because the person left you because they were supposed to leave you. That they were there for a season, and that season is over, and you've stayed past the expiration date of your relationship. Does that make sense? They didn't abandon you. What happened is they honored you. They loved you. They loved you so much that they honored the contract, your soul contract that they had with you when you guys came into this planet, and they left so you could heal and take the broken pieces on the floor and put that back together the way it's supposed to be, because it wasn't the right way the first time. And if you paid attention to the red flags that that person brought in, and had you loved yourself and respected yourself, you would have made a different choice earlier, but you didn't. Trust me, I've done it a lot of times. But when you start to see it that way, and you start to see the red flags as people are coming in new in your life, and you shift gears and say, I'm not doing that again. The universe brings you different people. You raise your vibration. You change your frequency. So as I'm sitting there by myself, riddled in pain, sit on the side of a mountain for 3 days, it hurts. And I had back pain anyways. And so I'm looking at these magical gifts that are in front of me that I don't understand. I'm doing healing work at some level already, but everything turned on for me so fast. I didn't have 15, 20 years of experience of, oh my gosh, I've experienced this and that, and so many of my friends have. I don't. At this point, I've got like 4.5, 5 years. And so, I'm operating in a realm I don't understand. I'm operating in blind faith, asking for a healing that I don't comprehend, but I knew there was going to be something for me. I knew there were so many aspects of Wes that was broken, that was disconnected, that was a lie. I didn't know who I was. And no fucking clue. All I knew is I wanted something different. And when I took my Reiki courses and Trinae said, you can take a Reiki class, you can get master certified, or you can learn to live a Reiki blessed life. I didn't know what the fuck that was, but I knew where I was in my life, and I was miserable, I was broken, I was lost, I was sick, I was tired, I hated myself, I hated my life, I fucking hated it. I had nothing even though I had everything. And I was sitting there when I heard that message, I was like 3 months out of the haunted house, if that. I think that was January, and we sold the house. The house got fixed end of September, October, so a couple months. I didn't understand what she was saying, but I wanted it. I wanted to be happy. I wanted this fucking thing that I heard people talk about saying, I love myself. If I heard that one more time, I'm like, dude, I'm going to break your fucking ribs. I am tired of hearing about that shit because it wasn't real. And the reality is, it is real. The reality is you can get to that point. The reality is I was believing a lie, but I didn't know how to find the truth. The lie is healing takes forever. Healing takes years. Healing takes this. It doesn't. It takes a moment in time. If you learn the basic principles that go with that. The basic principles are everything is a direct reflection of my life. I brought those people in. I brought that energy in. I am responsible. And when I look inside of myself, when somebody's angry in front of me, I look inside of myself for that anger. I identify it. I speak to it. I ask God to take it away. I'm working on that. And I move forward and I claim my responsibility for my actions. It changes things. When I look for the lesson and the beauty and the pain, it changes things. Doesn't mean it's not going to hurt for a little bit, but it ain't going to take me years. I can fucking tell you that. I ain't got time for that. I got stuff I want to do. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, all right. So still waiting on my message. I'm like, a steak dinner would be pretty good right about now. And Ty shows up. You heard his ass coming for 20 minutes away. Guess what he brought me to eat?
Nuts.
Yep. I had half a cup of nuts, a bottle of water, and a hard-boiled egg. And it didn't sound like much, but it filled me up. And he hung out and we talked for a while. And I told him about what was going on. He's like, no way, man, no way. Yeah. He's like, what do you think that means? I'm like, I have no fucking idea. And so he goes. It's getting dark. They're having... I think they're going on, I don't know what they're doing, but I forget what it was. It just sounded really, really good. And so I think he pulled like a cupcake or something out of his pocket, starts eating. I'm like, really, dude? He's like, yeah, you can't have this, but I got one for me. I'm like, thanks.
Nice.
Yeah. So he goes and it's getting dark. And I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of in the zone, just sitting there really quiet. And I stood up. And I have never jumped and squealed like a 4-year-old little girl as loud as I did, as there was a giant ass deer about 4 feet away from me, because he looked up as I looked up, and we scared each other so bad. I didn't hear him coming up. Man, those things are so freaking quiet. He snorted out and ran the other way, and I thought I was going to freaking have a heart attack. I'm like, son of a gun. I mean, I don't know how, that thing was quiet. So as I looked up, that cave started to show itself. And whatever was guarding the cave, or whatever you call that, I seen it. It walked up to the edge of the line and is just sitting there staring at me. And all of a sudden, these beings are coming out of this cave again. I'm like, dude, I have no idea what that is. So, it just gets dark, and, after a while, when there's no outside interference, there's no cell phone, there's no video games, there's no texting girls or whatever you want to do, you start to really look at yourself. The pain starts to come to the surface. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this pain. But it's all I know. It's all I ever felt. I didn't know anything else. Everything hurt. Physically and mentally, it hurt all the time. In the Marine Corps, they're like, yeah, pain don't hurt. It's just what it was. And I just remember feeling alone, which I'm accustomed to. I feel alone all the time. Not so much these days, but I still struggle with it. And so it's getting dark, and I'm like, it's probably like 6:30, so it's early. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to bed. I'm going to move this shit along. I'm like, all right, everybody, universe, any y'all motherfuckers out there, wake me up if you need me. So I crawl my thing, and I don't know what was moving around in the woods, but there was stuff out there, and I couldn't sleep, and I was freaked out. Then it had to have been in the middle of the night, or it was 8:15. I don't know which. I heard the bear, and it breathed out. I mean, it was like, whoo, and it was within 2 or 3 feet of me. I'm like, I am not a taco. 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 Well, the bear didn't give me shit for a message, but he came and checked me out. I didn't hear it come, and I didn't hear it go. And I had to pee so bad. I'm like, come on. So finally, I'm unzipping this thing, and I hop out real quick with my flashlight, and there's nothing around. And I turn around, and there's the dragon eyes again. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he didn't say nothing. So I decided I was going to step outside of the circle, and I'm going to go see this dragon. The second my foot crossed that barrier, there was no eyeballs. I don't understand that. I'd step back in, they're there. I would step out, they're gone. I'd step in, they're there. I'd step out, they're gone. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm not going to walk over and freaking touch you or whatever, because you couldn't see anything but eyeballs. And just the night just went slow. And, the next morning, Lakota comes. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, she said it could be a 2-day thing. And I'm thinking, oh, I got a message and, I'm good. And she's sitting there. She said, you're not done yet, brother. And poked me in the chest. I'm like, stop poking me in the chest. She always pokes me in the chest. You're not done because you're not working hard enough. I'm like, I said, well, what does that mean? She said, fucking, well, she didn't say fucking. She poked me. She might as well have been saying that. She poked me, said, work harder, and she leaves. I'm like, all right. So I had extra prayer ties. I don't know, about 100 or so, a couple hundred that I could do still. And I remember looking at myself, and I said, I'm going to do a prayer tie for everything that's a lie. that I'm weak, that I'm ugly, that I'm stupid, that I can't be this, I can't be that. Just everything that is in my DNA that I believed to be true, which was a lie. And there was 36 of them. And it was funny, when I did the prayer ties, they got all bunched up. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't grab the 2 strings and pull it out to see it like I did in my other prayer ties. So I left that bunch to the side. And then I decided I'm going to do prayer ties for the truth. At 126, I ran out. 126. I probably could have gotten 200 at least. That I'm beautiful, that I'm talented, that I'm gifted, that I'm loved, that I have all this opportunity. And no matter how bundled up that string of ties got, I could reach in and pull them out, and they laid out perfectly and pretty. Isn't that interesting? The energy of 36 was so jumped up and gross, you couldn't uncombine it. And the other one, which was 3 or 4 feet long, I even balled it up and threw it on the ground and then picked it up, and it opened up perfectly. How's that possible? Except for our prayers are powerful. Our prayers dictate our life. Our prayers give us what we have. If all you talk about is lack, you have lack. If all you talk about is how you're fucked up, they're going to give you that. These days, I catch myself thinking, it's funny, it's weird still, I'll catch myself saying, I love you to myself. And I'm like, all right, I'll take that. It beats what I used to think. So the night goes by, the dragon's there, nothing else much really happens. And the next morning, Lakota comes, and I am bent over in pain. It hurts so bad. And she looks at me, and she leans in, and she pokes me in the chest. And she says, when you speak your truth, your pain will be gone. I'm like, okay, yeah, Andrea, that shit's gonna happen. So she's sitting there, and she's just kind of lounging around, her and Ty, and they're talking. And, to myself, I'm thinking about it. And all of a sudden, I just start to cry. And it came to me. And I looked at her. I said, Lakota, I give up on myself all the time, every day. And the second I said, I give up on myself, is like somebody peeled the skin off of my back. Why you guys can't make it softer, but it's like they peeled the skin off my back, and instantly that gut-wrenching back pain, cramping legs, cramping feet, cramping shoulders, cramping neck and hands was gone. And she looked at me and she says something in Lakota, you speak your truth. Now you're done. And it was interesting because as she came up with the dogs, 2 or 3 of the dogs were like, do, they're just knocking stuff over. But one of the dogs would not come into the little camp. She was a healer dog. Like my Abigail and my Kennedy and my Sugar were. They can see energy. They can see things. Abby sees demons, boy. You don't want to come across a demon on somebody. That dog, I'm like, you can't bite that person. She's crazy. But you can see the dog looking around the circle and looking up and looking at an energy field that you and I would not be able to see, but you could feel it. And the dog would not come in. And as I reached over and untied the prayer ties, because the ceremony's over, the dog instantly jumps up and runs into the camp. It was trippy. It was bizarre.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So I started focusing on where I give up on myself. The things that I say, the things that I do, the people that I hang around, the women that I date that I know is not good for me. You know, the bullshit stories I tell myself. And that's where you give up on yourself. And so that was my focus point. And I'm going again this year. I don't know when it's going to be, and do another vision quest, because I know there's another layer. There's multiple layers that need to come out. And so, Andrea, that was my story about the vision quest.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I have a lot of questions about that.
It was a lot of, I can promise you, there's a lot of alone time, but that's the point. And, you know, if you want to start changing your life, you can't hear God's word with the radio on. You can't hear God's word with your cell phone on. You can't hear God's word texting a guy or texting a girl or whatever the fuck you're doing. You don't hear God's word unless you get quiet. You don't hear God talk to you unless you're quiet. You can't be quiet if you have those things. And you quiet your mind and you go within, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, shows itself to you. There's opportunity and love and blessings and growth in that. And you're sitting on the ground for 3 days and Mother Earth is healing your body. Your vibration is increasing as you breathe. My favorite thing to say is every step I take raises my vibration. Every breath I take heals my body. Jesus flows through me at a high level. Together, we heal the world. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? And I can appreciate if you don't have a relationship with Jesus. I didn't for a long time. I was pissed off at that motherfucker. I say it, and he knows it too. We've had detailed conversations. You listen to the show, you know why. But at the end of the day, he loved me anyways. He loved me until I learned how to love myself, just like my friend Justin did for me. Justin, you know I love your ass, man. And by the way, thanks for keep coming in town and not visiting. Just saying, as public knowledge for around the world, Justin doesn't come visit Wes when he's in town.
He's loving you from a distance.
But he called me the other day just to tell me he loved me. And I know he listens to the show, and you're a friend of the show. You're my friend, and I love you very much. So I think that's the show for today.
That was some good stuff.
You know, we got all kinds of things coming up.
Oh, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into all the kinds of things we have coming up, I wanted to say that between the time we recorded the last episode and this episode, I don't know, a little book called The 15-Minute Transformation came out.
Oh, yeah. I wrote a book. It's called The 15-Minute Transformation. It's on Amazon. It teaches you how to change your energy, change your mindset, and change your life 15 minutes a day. It's selling really, really well.
Yes, and you guys need to get a copy. You know, when I was listening to Wes talk in this episode about how change can happen quickly, I mean, we both believe that. We've seen it. And this is a wonderful book and guide to get you to heal and change quickly. It doesn't have to take a long time. Wes, thank you. It's an amazing book, The 15-Minute Transformation. Mm-hmm. You guys got to get it.
And what's the name of your podcast, Andrea?
How Good It Can Get.
How Good It Can Get. Yes. She talks about manifesting and all kinds of cool things in that podcast. And it's in 10 countries too, isn't it?
Yes. And my next episode has a very special guest on it. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Is that guest shockingly good looking?
Shockingly.
And humble. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share my story. I just want to let you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Enlightenment Unknown with Wes Coons, your guide on the quest for self-discovery and the version of you we haven't met yet.